the unknown one. This is Blaine Pardoe. He's a military historian and author of BattleTech books, and he'll talk more about that and a lot of different, writes in a lot of different genres. Has been, sorry, apologize. Thank you. Okay, we're getting started here. Okay. Blaine Pardoe is going to be talking to us. He is a military historian, has written in a whole bunch of different genres, and I don't know how many books, BattleTech and Robotech, and so I don't know, yeah, a lot of different stuff. And he has had some recent experience with being canceled for conservative views, and he's going to talk about that and how to fight back, I guess.
Uh, this is a story that you will tell your grandchildren, and mightily bored they'll be. I always love that line from A Bridge Too Far. Please don't take my jocularity about any of this as the fact that I do not recognize that my life has been threatened in this process. This is just me trying to kind of mentally cope with it. I try to use a little bit of humor. And besides, it's after lunch, everybody will start dozing off. So I'll try to keep this as light and informal as possible. I've kind of broken this into two parts. One, I'm going to tell you the story of what actually happened, because I think it sets some context. And I think it's important as fellow conservatives for you to understand how these things can snowball and how they transcend and how they impact. And then I think the most important part is the lessons I've learned going through this, so that if you are the target of a cancellation effort, what can you do and how should you act and behave, so that you don't fall into some of the pitfalls that we've seen with guys like Joe Rogan and some of these other folks. So prepare to be undazzled. It's not a glorious subject because I'm dealing with woke people. Honestly, I've been trying to figure out where all this started, and I'm going to go back to 2012. I wrote a piece for the Culpeper Times, which is the local newspaper where I lived, circulation of 13,000, on how I thought it was wrong to tear down Confederate statues. My stance was very simple. I was a military historian. These are one-of-a-kind works of art. My argument was use due process before you tear down statues. I wasn't advocating anything, like, hey, I'm a flag-waving Confederate, blah, blah, blah. I had relatives that fought on both sides of the war. I really don't glamorize the Confederacy. It's just it's a reality of what's out there. In 2020, I started getting approached by a person whose name was Faith McCloskey. This person started saying, hey, you're a Confederate apologist for writing this. I had to look that up. And, it's a made up woke name. And, it was saying I supported the lost cause theory, which I didn't. And, and I tried engaging with this person and saying, you're full of shit, basically, and explaining logically that's not who I am and you're misrepresenting me. And this person just kept going. So I did what most of you do, block. Well, then the person started showing up on Facebook and was spouting off on various forums of my fan community. Now, just so you know, I have a pretty big fan community. I'm a New York Times bestselling author. I write true crime books with my daughter. I write military history books. I've been writing BattleTech at that point for 30 some years. I've written numerous novels and game material and things along those lines. At this point, I've had well over 100 books published. So I have a good fan community. And this person was kind of salting that fan community to try to go, Blaine's a bad person. Okay, I blocked that person again in Facebook, going, okay, I just don't want to deal with this because it's clearly a person with an agenda. I did look this person up. Faith McCloskey was 20 plus years old, a graduate from a nursing school in Tennessee, lived in Pennsylvania, claimed she lived in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, was an actively practicing nurse. So I was like, oh, and she was a lesbian. Not that that matters, but that was a big predominant thing. So I just kind of ignored it, etc. After January 6th, I posted a very humorous, I thought, post on Twitter that said, The problems that Republicans have is we don't know how to riot. We didn't hit one target. And it had to be hilarious watching this guy carrying Nancy Pelosi's podium on the metro out of town that night. To me, that was fun. This person took it as, and literally this is how it was positioned. Blaine Pardoe is a seditionist who backed the deaths of 5 people who were murdered in the Capitol the day of the riots. He's a seditionist. So they contacted my publisher and said, how can you be doing business with the person who's this crazy, who supported the overthrow of the government? I don't care where you fall on the whole January 6th thing. To me, it was a large-scale trespassing event, and it was wrong. It was wrong. But it was not an attempt to overthrow the government. As a military historian, I can tell you, you need guns to do that. All right. I just thought it was I don't want to use the word retarded, but it was a retarded argument. And I know if I offended anybody in the room who's a retard, I'm sorry. So, they contacted my publisher. Publisher said, okay, we'll look into this. Catalyst Game Labs was the publisher. They licensed BattleTech from Topps and Fanatics, the baseball card company and the crazy people who sell jerseys. They looked into it. They said, we'll look at a year's worth of Blaine social media, which I thought was excessive. And they looked in my books, because this person claimed, this was my favorite part. I saw the email. He has hidden secret Confederate messages in his BattleTech novels. And these books have been out since 1995 in some cases. So I was like, wow, I did? That's cool. They reviewed all of it. Catalyst said, you're crazy. This doesn't hold any water. But they also, the editor there said, well, maybe we can get this person to write a short story for us because, hey, maybe lesbians are the next big group we can pull into the community. So they actually offered this person a job to write a short story. And I told them at the time, I said, this person's a crazy online stalker. This is a huge mistake. They said, we know what we're doing. They lied. So time goes on. This person's still peppering stuff online on a weekly or sometimes even daily or hourly basis. Every time I posted a tweet, this person was posting it. And people were sending me screenshots of it. I wasn't following this person. People are like, what's this person saying about you? And I blew it off. My book, Blue Dawn, was announced by Defiance Press. Now, Blue Dawn is a conservative political thriller. I would tell you, go ahead and look up Blue Dawn on Amazon. It's up there. But what you're going to find is dishwashing soap, so you have to make sure you're looking for Blue Dawn book. Now, all that had happened in March of 2021 was that the description for Blue Dawn, which was coming out in another month and a half, 2 months, was posted. So the description, I'll just read part of it to you. The rest of it, I invite you to read online and obviously buy the book. Almost 5 years ago, America, as everyone knew it, came to an abrupt and spectacular coup d'etat. It fell. It was called the Liberation by the progressives and radicals. It screamed for its outcome. It was called the Fall by its victims whose freedoms were trampled on. The White House and the Capitol were overrun by anarchists, and the leaders of the once proud nation were either imprisoned or sent to social quarantine camps. Okay, it was fiction at the time. And there's more to it, but it's clearly it's a work of fiction, right? It's a political thriller, and this person became unglued and reached out to a fellow author. And bear in mind, BattleTech community, all the authors, we communicate with each other because we have to coordinate our words. Reached out to that community. Does anybody mind if I swear? A little late. I already went to the retard, but we're going to get worse. So this person contacted one of my fellow authors who was a friend of mine and said, I want to fucking shoot him in the fucking crotch. Better yet, I would rather see him burned alive. And this person immediately said to me, he said, did you drive over this lady's cat? What prompted this? I said, oh, it's this crazy person again. And I spent the weekend, I got this, like on a Thursday or Friday, and I talked it over with my wife, and I'm like, am I overreacting? Like, this is crazy talk. Because now we're talking about somebody who's fantasizing about hurting me. She's like, Monday morning, go down and talk to sheriff. I did. They opened an investigation on Faith McCloskey. So in the meantime, they said, whatever you do, don't respond. Well, Faith went nuts. Every 2 days she was trying to post on my blog, sending me these horrific things, sent me threatening videos of Trump supporters being beaten and bloody, and stuff. Sent me things with a hashtag still, or die mad about it was one of them. Really sending some very nasty stuff and very threatening. Even referenced one of my books where I had a character that smothered another person with a pillow, and they said, I hope this happens to you. So I'm forwarding all this to the police, and the police are like, whatever you do, don't say anything, which for me is hard. Wife will attest to that. So it took several months, but tracking down, a search warrant was issued for Faith's IP address. And here's a big shock. Faith McCloskey is not a female 20-plus-year-old lesbian nurse. Faith McCloskey was a 40-year-old who had been fired from his job at Walmart for issuing terroristic threats and harassment. He had pled guilty to those charges, was on probation. He lived with his father. His father paid all of his bills because they were able to track it. I'm not going to tell you his name. That'll come out at some point. We're still in legal ground here, so it's kind of fun. But they identified it. The recommendation was, under Virginia's law, we do have a cyber harassment law, but it's a little vague about how it can be applied. He said your best starting point is to get a protective order, which I did. This person never showed in court for it. He hired a lawyer. And the agreement we had was, you will not use my name online. You won't talk about me. You won't post about me. I won't sue you for defamation. And you're agreeing to the protective order. He agreed to the protective order, and 3 days later started posting about me online again. So, this is a person who doesn't have a great deal of control. But I had a protective order in place. I made it very public after that was put into place. And I told the Baltech community, you guys have all been misled. This person has lied to you. You've been catfished. This is not this young woman in the pictures that he's used. He stole someone's identity, by the way. Stole their pictures for this. So it's not a young woman. It's a 40-year-old guy, and he's a criminal. So obviously he didn't like that, but I never told anybody who his name was or where he lived. So he was very upset about that and continued to rant and rave about me. I just ignored it because I've got a protective order, and I changed my lifestyle. I started buying guns. I started running drills in the house for what happens if we hear a window break in the night. To think that this doesn't impact you, it really does emotionally. There's a lot of nights you hear a thump somewhere in the house and you're up with a gun wandering around in the dark to find your dog, doing something stupid. It's scary, and you have to really start looking at your own personal security. Even events like this, I often will send people my protective order to say, make sure this person doesn't show up. And the only reason I didn't do it in this case was it's a small enough group. I think I'd be able to spot this person. But I've had to do that in numerous situations. I went public with it, obviously. In February of 2022, my last Battletech book came out, and this person then decided to stop complaining to Catalyst because they didn't get anywhere. They complained to Tops and Fanatics. And a total of 5 emails were sent, 3 of which, by the way, had the exact same wording. So they were sock accounts that had cut and pasted the same information. And I'm telling you this because this is how these guys work. The reaction from Tops and Fanatics was they told Catalyst, make this go away. Now, my response was, well, then put out a statement that you're a publishing company, you publish entertainment, and it doesn't matter what someone's personal politics are as long as they're not in your product. They said, no, we're going to cancel all of our contracts with you going forward. I had 7 projects that were either done or in flight at the time. So it took months for me to get paid on all of those. And finally, in August of last year, I announced it, which is why I didn't come, Robert, last year. I was literally in the middle of this shit. I went public with it. Part of what I told Catalyst was, you've got to tell the fan community what you're doing. And you have to explain to them why you're getting rid of me and not other authors. And they said, well, you put some pretty inflammatory stuff on the internet. Now, I'm going to give you some examples, by the way, because this is the stuff that I was told. You're a misogynist. So why am I a misogynist? And they said, this picture. And they had a picture of Joy Behar I saw on the internet. The woman from The View. I assume it's a woman from The View. I don't watch The View. I had written the post, you could throw this woman in a pond and skim ugly for a week. If I've offended anyone who wants to sleep with Joey Behar in the audience, I don't care. I was told that was misogynistic. I wrote an article for several conservative websites about diversity and inclusiveness programs and how I thought they were nothing more than enforcing quotas in corporate America. I had experience with this. I was told that that was anti-trans and anti-gay. My son is gay. I've always embraced it. You do not know what it's like having to call your own kid and go, I've been told I'm a homophobe. Am I? Because I don't think I am. And we've had very candid discussions like, no, you've been incredibly supportive and everything else. But I've got these people online going, see, he's homophobic, he's transphobic. By the way, Faith McCluskey, when I called her out on not being a lesbian, decided at that point she was trans. Because then anytime I posted anything about her, it was a transphobic attack. So, this is how what you're dealing with, okay? I got paid off. I went public, and I told the fan community what happened. And you go through a lot during this period. First of all, you assume guilt. You assume I did something wrong. And anybody who's ever been through it, I see you nodding your head because you've been through it. Your initial reaction is, I did something wrong. You go, what can I do to make this right? What can I do to fix this? And I took a week to do nothing but research people who had been canceled to see what they did and what the reactions were to it and stuff. So I'm going to give you I'm now shifting away from the horror story of how I got here to tell you the tips of what happens when this happens. And I say it that way very carefully, folks. This will happen if you are conservative. They don't care if you're writing for a major motion picture studio or if you're writing for a little tiny science fiction franchise about big stompy robots. They don't care. They will come for you. So, first lesson I learned, don't apologize for anything. Do not apologize. The minute you apologize, and I've looked at a number of people who are conservative who tried to apologize, there is no way you can word it that doesn't make you look like you're accepting some degree of guilt for what you did. I didn't do anything wrong. I wrote a book that's a piece of fiction. And it drove a person crazy who was already crazy. Don't apologize. And don't go, I had a boss once who did this to me all the time. He would go, I want an apology from you. And I didn't feel like I owed him one, so I'd say, I'm sorry you're upset. And he'd go, apology accepted. And I'm like, I don't think you listened to what I said. You can't even pull that, because the minute you say the words, I'm sorry, you've admitted you did something wrong. And even if you couch it with a lot of language, their whole thing is, see, he's admitting you're doing something wrong. So I didn't fall into that trap. You need to communicate to your constituents. My constituents were my fans. I didn't have to explain to my family that I wasn't a homophobe, and I didn't think Joey Behar was sexy and all that. They got that. But your fan community the fan community was clearly confused, because they're like, well, this person's saying you're Satan on earth. What are you? And I'm like, and I would communicate with them and tell them very frankly, this person is unhinged. These are the things this person, I brought receipts essentially and said, I'm not going to tell you who this person is, but I could, and this is what I'm dealing with. So you need to communicate to your fan community. And I did that very openly with the fans. You need to keep track of all your conversations, dates, emails, screenshot tweets, because they will go through and delete their tweets almost immediately when they realize you're doing this. And I have stacks of this stuff. And part of what drove me nuts with Catalyst, just so you understand where this came down, is they said, see, you're ultra right wing. And I said, well, you've got guys who advocate abortion, who are artists and authors who work for you. You have them saying that Donald Trump should be locked up for crimes that he hasn't even been charged with at that point. You know, I said, are you going to let any of them go? And they said, well, no. Those are mainstream views. Your views are radical and dangerous. So I knew I was being targeted because of my politics at this point. So I began to also keep track of the lefties who were still working at Catalyst and their tweets and stuff, because they're promoting Antifa. You know, Antifa is part of the greatest generation. They stormed the beaches on Normandy. I don't think so. But they, you know, I kept track of all that because I was like, if this is going to go to court, I'm going to be able to prove that it was my politics that got me into trouble. If you don't submit and roll over and die, they will get desperate. So what they want you to do is self-censor. They want you to go, I've given up writing. I've given up being an artist. I'm going to not do that anymore. I can't deal with this. I'm just not going to do it. That's what they actually want. They want you to self-censor, because then it's not them censoring you, it's you censoring you. And you're doing that because of your guilt. And when you don't roll over, they start doing crazier things. So they started making up tweets. They would create tweets that looked like a tweet, but it's not anything I ever wrote. And they'd say, see, this is what Blaine posted. And some of them were racial things. Some of them were crazy. I had one guy accuse me, and I'm pretty sure it's my stalker, by the way, say I was playing MechWarrior Online and Blaine was uttering racial epithets. And I'm like, I'm 58. At the time, I was like 58 years old. I'm like, I'm 58 years old. If I'm online playing, I'm just trying to stay alive. I don't have, and I certainly wouldn't be issuing racial epithets because it's not part of who I am. But they will make up lies. So they get desperate when you don't drop. Be prepared for that. Take the necessary legal protections. Contact law enforcement. Almost every state in the country has a cyberbullying or cyber harassment law. Different prosecutors will prosecute them. Some won't. Some have different criterias. Your own state is going to be different. Look it up. Go to law enforcement. Get them open. The case against my stalker is still open with law enforcement. It's not closed. So this guy can still go over the line and do something stupid, and probably will. So, you know, take the legal protections to protect yourself. Get a lawyer. Have your lawyer review your contracts. Have them talk to you about this. You can sue people for defamation and libel. Now, a lot of people have asked me, why didn't you sue your crazy ass stalker? He got fired from Walmart. He's living with his dad. You know, his dad's paying all of his bills. What was I going to get? You know, you have to kind of apply some common sense. You have to kind of go, am I really going to get am I going to get my just rewards here by doing this? Yeah, I toyed with that. But, you know, I don't want to get, it's a different state and I have to get a lawyer that's been practicing in that state. You have to look at things and really do the cost benefit analysis, but still protect yourself. Yeah, let's be real clear about my relationship with Catalyst. Those fuckers can lick my ball sack. I do. These were guys that were friends of mine for more than 20 years, personal friends who I've had to my house. We've been very close friends, but once this happened, all bets are off. We are not friends. We are not communicating. Matter of fact, they've tried to reach out to me on several occasions. I'm like, you know my lawyer's number. That's where you have to call. I'm not taking your phone calls. I just don't want to deal with it. And you have to be willing to kind of do that. It's not the fans. I support the fans, but not the actual company. There's no way I would go back because, and I had to struggle with this because my wife actually asked me, she said, if they came back and said we made a horrible mistake, would you go back? And I was like, it kind of boiled down to one thing. The trust has been shattered. And once the trust is shattered, you go back, that's on you. Everything that follows, it's because of you. And I'm not going to go back from it. So, yeah, it's just my personal take. You guys got to arrive at your own conclusion. Be prepared for the inevitable betrayals. Oh, curse your inevitable betrayal. That will happen. You will have fans that have been your biggest supporter, who have sent you all sorts of nice stuff on Facebook and Twitter and talked about you're the best author on the planet. The minute something comes out like this, they will hop on the bandwagon and go, let's burn him. And they will be part of that. And it was shocking to me to see people do that. Part of that was, I guess I was being naive. I just kind of thought people saw me for the talent and that was it. But they were letting the politics play some of that role. You will be betrayed. I will say this. December of this year, Faith McCloskey came out and posted December of last year, and said, you know, I'm not a lesbian and I'm not trans. But Blaine Pardoe still sucks. That was the gist of it. And by the way, I'm now operating under a new fake name, Ace Caller. So, you know, it was when that happened, I did get 4 or 5 people reach out to me and say, you know, I kind of threw you under the bus. And now I realize I was lied to just like everybody else. And I feel bad about that. I did get 4 or 5 of those things. They were nice, but I don't trust those people any more than I can trust anybody else at this point. But be prepared. There are going to be people that you thought were your friends, especially on social media, because nobody's really a friend on social media. They will stab you in the back because they are literally the mob in Frankenstein that grabs the pitchforks and torches and says, let's go kill the monster. You need to control the narrative. Now, I knew Catalyst was going to be passive aggressive about this and not say much. So I immediately got approached by probably a dozen YouTubers who do live streams and stuff. And they said, hey, we want to interview you about this. I hopped on all of them. And I mean, for like 3 weeks of my life, that's what I was doing, was every day doing interviews about this, writing articles about it, to the point where anything Catalyst said at this point just looked futile. It just looked, there's no way they could spin it. And they did a lot of stuff going, we get back from Gen Con, we're going to do a big press release about everything that happened. That never happened. They couldn't, because the narrative was lost. And I think as a conservative, you have to go, I don't like doing these things, but I need to make sure my version of the story is the one that if somebody's going out and Google, that's what they're seeing. You will be accused of more stuff than you're humanly possible of doing. You know, like I said, you're going to be accused of stuff that deeply offends you. And you're going to get more of it. They will take anything that you post and twist it to some weird narrative that they have about, see, this is proof that he's a transphobe. And you're just going to have to cope with that because it will not go away. They will not stop because they haven't gotten you to roll over yet. They will bait you. Now, I got these weird messages, and they would always start with, I'm a huge fan. Red light. And then the one person said, I'm curious though, because I've read your stuff for years. How many gay and transphobic characters have you included in your novels, and how many are you going to include going forward? There's no right answer to this. If you say 3, they're going to say which ones. Then they're going to go, that's not enough. Or you didn't portray them correctly, or whatever. They will bait you with these things, and they'll always do it friendly first. I'm a huge, I've always enjoyed your stuff. Tell me though, what are your plans going forward? Are you going to put more transphobic characters in there? Or are you going to have more trans characters in there? What are you going to do? You know, and they're baiting you to give an answer so that they can sit and tear you apart about it. Those I just delete, but I'm warning you, it'll come and you'll be tempted because you're like, this will show that I'm doing these things. Now, my argument was somebody actually confronted me at a live meeting. They said, well, how many gay characters have you written about? And I said, the books are in the 32nd century. Why do you think that's a big deal then? You know, what makes you think that because it's a big deal right now, that it's going to be a big deal centuries from now? So don't worry about it. You know, and that's how I've had to deal with it. You're going to need to be wary of who you engage with. You will be reached out to by crazies on the right. And I mean, the Alex Joneses are out there. You know, the tinfoil hats and stuff. And yeah, he's right about a lot of stuff, I know. But, you know, you're going to be approached by guys who are kind of out there in the limbo on both sides. And you got to be careful about who you get in with. Now, my publicist always watches very carefully when I do interviews. I got one from Philadelphia. It was Philadelphia. And he goes, I'm going to tell you, this guy's a liberal and he's going to go at you. I was like, cool. It's a TV show too. So I was, Facebook did, and he was like, and I was on for a 15-minute segment. So I knew he couldn't ditch me because otherwise they'd have to fill whatever time was left. And first thing he said is, there's no such thing as cancel culture. It doesn't exist. It's just the repercussions of your actions. What do you say to that? I said, well, you're completely wrong. And we went at it for 15 minutes. You know, and I literally had to hold my ground with it, but I knew going into it, this is what this was. He was trying to bait me into this trap. So you're going to get approached by people on both extremes. You got to be careful who you associate with. And so you have to watch that. No matter what, you will be explaining this for years. Because it can be Googled. And there's going to be people who have posted stuff on Reddit, which is a wasteland, about this, who have posted stuff that is so made up. It's some of the better fiction I've read. I was like, I wish I lived that kind of lifestyle. But, you know, it's easy for me to joke about it a little bit now, but it, you know, if you'd talked to me a year ago, I would have fallen down in a puddle on the floor with this and gone catatonic and rocked. But it's out there, and, you know, you're going to be explaining it for some time to come. And you just need to get comfortable doing that. That's why I'm here today. So I'm comfortable doing it, but it's not a lot of fun. The last thing I really, you know, no, it's not the last thing, but probably the most important thing. And you guys are going to meet Jason tonight at 7:00. Jason's one of my publishers. You don't become a victim. Okay. You were a target. There's a big difference between being a target and being a victim. There are guys who got canceled that they go out and that's their shtick. When they talk, it's, I got canceled. It was terrible. They weave this. They are wallowing. I'll talk about it if somebody, like when Robert calls, he said, you want to talk about it? I'm like, yeah, I'll talk about it. But I don't, that's not who I am. That doesn't define who you are. I was the target of a cancellation. Absolutely. My victim? Hell no. So let me tell you what happened. Because this is the part that I think everybody needs to hear. For about a month, I was like, this is terrible. I'm probably never going to be able to write for anybody again, other than Defiance Press, who wanted more Blue Dawn books. And I thought, I'm never going to be able to write science fiction again. The fans are going to hate me, etc. 5 different publishers reached out to me personally. 5. And said, we want to be in the Blaine Pardoe business. We actually don't give a shit what your politics are. Actually, one of them said, we really like your politics. Now, one of them I disregarded only because they said, we want you to write for us. We think you're great. Can you do it under a different name? And I was like, no. You know, because it's like, you want me to do stuff for you, but you don't want anybody to know it's me, and I don't like it. But the other 4 came with very tangible offers. And one of those was Wargate, who will be speaking today at, was it 7? Jason's coming in, and Jason and those guys approached me and they said, we don't give a shit about your politics, but we agree with them. And we just want you to bring your fans over to our group and write stuff for us. So for this year alone, just so you know, I have had 8 books published between two publishers. And I've got one coming out in 2 weeks, but from a different publisher altogether. Bain Books has got me doing stuff for anthologies right now. I've been writing Wargate. I've been writing all this stuff. So I will tell you, your first month of this, nobody's going to talk to you because they're going to want to see, can you handle it? The publishers are watching you. The other authors are watching. They want to see, are you going to handle it really well and handle it professionally? And if you do, then the offers start coming in. And when they come in, it was literally a buyer's market. I could do whatever I wanted. And I had offers that were very competitive. And what's weird, and I will tell you this, I'm making more money than I ever did before. I'm selling more books to a broader audience than I have in years. I've got more fans than before. And I've been able to walk away from what all of the stuff was with Battletech. And I realized finally, my wife put it to me this way. She said, you know what? This was the best thing that ever happened to you. It was a kick in your ass. You were being very complacent. For 36 years, you were writing Battletech, and it was, you could do it and do it in your sleep. This has forced you to up your game, to be better at what you're doing and everything else. And I wanted to end on that note because I think it's important. They're going to come for you. They have to have a target. These people only exist on the internet. Okay? It's the only place they have a life. Think about the guy that I'm dealing with. He sits at home. I kind of picture him personally with his pants down around his ankles, but, watching stuff on the internet. And he literally, somebody sent me a thing the other day. It's like he posted about me 5 times in like 1 hour. This is somebody who's crazy and upset, and they just live on the internet. It's the only place they have any meaning. In the real world, he's a 40-year-old, convict. He's been arrested and charged. He's on probation. He is a criminal. And he goes around cyber harassing. That's the level of person that you're up against. I personally think I deserve a better villain. I want Lex Luthor, okay? And there's a lot of bald guys in here. I'm counting on you coming through. But I deserve a Lex Luthor. I don't deserve Pee Wee Herman, okay? And that's what I got in this case. And I joke about it. It's still very, my wife is very anti-gun before this. My wife is now very pro-gun. There's a lot of things that are silver lining. And that was one of them. And, I've had to take self-defense courses. I've lost 20 pounds. I go to the gym now 6 days a week. Okay. I'm in the best physical shape I've been in my entire life, which tells you how really bad things were before. But I've gotten into better shape as a result of this. It's actually improved my writing. So for all of you, I'm going to tell you, go to the gym first thing in the morning. It wakes your brain up and you'll be able to write better and write more. So there have been some silver linings with this, but I'm still dealing with this legally. I have to go to court to extend the protective order. This guy's fighting it. I have to go in November and do this all over again with this guy. So this has been going on for a while, and it will continue to go. I'm more than willing, by the way, to spend his father's money and make him hire a lawyer to do stuff. So it's fun for me. But, I've got to do this, and you have to take the precautions to protect yourself. So, but there is a silver lining. If you're good at what you do, if you're persistent, if you're dedicated, and I think anybody that comes to BasedCon falls into that bucket, okay? If you're good at what you do and you've got your fans, they will follow you, and they don't care about this stuff. So that's my spiel. Now, I'm going to load this. I want to guarantee at least 4 questions because I brought 4 books, and whoever asks a question gets a free book off the pile. So, yes, we'll go over. Yeah, look at okay. Yeah, I've got a mean lawyer who doesn't have a heart, but I don't want to spend the money to go after what might be a little money. And it's just not worth it for me. The fact that he's living with this guy is torture enough, in my opinion. So anyway, pass a book down to this guy. We'll go with you. I can't explain crazy. Okay, because I'm a logical person, and I think a lot of people are. And you try to explain this behavior using logic, reasoning. You're dealing with people that have mental problems. And this, like I said, this started with an editorial in a paper he doesn't even get. It's the fact that I wrote this, it became a focus of his entire life. And it's still the focus of his entire life. So, welcome. I'm going to try to spread this out a little bit. Okay. So, what did you know about social media? We all know it's you mentioned Reddit. Learned about how to see what's out there. My block list is very long. I don't get into arguments with people. When they want to argue about this, all they're trying to do is feed the fire, and I just block them. I will engage with my fans, and I'll talk about all my writing and everything else. I will engage with people on social media. There's certain social medias I don't get into anymore. There's certain groups. I was a member of all the Battletech groups. I was a very active member. I was the only writer that really engaged with the fan community heavily. And overnight, the Battletech groups were told by Catalyst, block Blaine Pardoe. Now, I hadn't posted anything bad. They just blocked me right off the bat, said you can't be there. And a lot of the fans got upset with it. And a couple of them reversed and put me back in. There's actually a group I found out just the other day that's now called Based Battletech. That they got so pissed, they went out and formed their own group with 300 people. So, before I forget, but that was, I think, one of the things that I found to be a real huge challenge. I'm going to go to this gentleman. Congratulations. Thank you. That's great. The scary part is he said when he was a kid, which means we all know how old I am, which is older than dirt. I personally wouldn't, but you know what you're getting into. So I kind of have to phrase it that way. It's a personal choice. I wouldn't discourage you from submitting. I don't want to do that. I have no problem with Battletech. A lot of people said, why didn't you call for a boycott of Battletech? Well, first of all, I don't think it would work. Gamers are crazy and they're going to buy stuff no matter what. And I'm not a big fan of boycotts, honestly, other than Bud Light, which I thought was hilarious. But I'm just not into boycotting. I have nothing bad to say about Battletech, and I won't talk bad about any of the authors except Mike Stackpole. And, but I won't say anything bad about Battletech. My problem is strictly the people at Catalyst who are the current licensees of the Battletech line. That could change. Their contract's renewed every year. They may lose it at some point. They lose it, somebody else buys it, I may be back, but I doubt it. I don't have anything bad to say about Battletech. Battletech brought in a lot of money over the years. So I am always in favor of Battletech. If that's where you want to get published, do it. But understand one thing. At any point, they may pull your stuff because you're here at BasedCon. By the way, this is the last book I had, so send that back to him, please. Thank you. And if you got a free book, do me a favor, read them. And if you didn't get the first book in the series, read the whole series. Give me some reviews, just send some love back. Yes. Absolutely. And that's, it's funny you say that, but we have to support each other. And I was amazed at the number of other authors, one of which you're going to meet tonight, Jason Ounspaw, who was canceled at one point and just said, I'm going to start my own publishing company, and did. And it's hugely successful. And, I've met with him and I've met with Nick, and a lot of these guys have been screwed over. And if we don't support each other, we will go down individually. They will rip us apart and chew us up. Yes. Okay. Were there liberals that stood up for me? Absolutely. I have friends that are liberals. Everybody in here, I'm sure, does. And you know what? My friends that were liberals were like, this sucks. They were actually more appalled than some of my conservative friends, because conservatives are like, well, it's happening to everybody. We see it every day. When it happens to somebody that and they're liberal, and it happens to somebody they know, it's like, oh my God, that happened? Wow, there's a cancel culture? I didn't know. They're shocked and dismayed. Are we going to get past it? I would say, I've had a lot of people go, I think we're moving past it. I don't believe that. They've simply moved on to different targets. And I think they're going further down the tree. And I think the indie writing movement has really screwed up, because it's like, I had people contact Wargate and go, cancel Blaine. I own a game company because we're going to do a game based on Land and Sea, and it's really cool. It's called Creative Juggernaut. I actually got 2 emails to Creative Juggernaut, a company I own, asking the officers of the company to ditch me because I was toxic, I was a homophobe, I was a xenophobe. I've always, by the way, been a xenophobe. I'm against aliens. But I got accused of all this stuff, and it was great because my business partner's like, do you want to answer these? I'm like, oh, yes. And I did. But to your point, we have to help each other. So if you get canceled, feel free to reach out to me. I've actually published articles on this stuff at this point. I will share with you my experience. If you go, should I respond to this one or not respond to it? I can tell you what I would do. I'm not going to tell you it's right. I'll tell you what I would do. And that may help. Yeah. Yeah. They've gotten away with it. They've gotten away, and they've gotten some victories. Look what they did to Dr. Seuss. For God's sake, the man's dead. They have gone after dead people and have been successful. They've gone after living people and have been successful. And because they've had some victories, they're willing to keep going. I think that's what drives this. Yes. No. Oh, all right. Yeah. Well, what I did is I actually did a blog post, and I recommend you guys read it because it goes into a lot more detail. It's called "The Truth About Faith McCloskey" up on my blog, and I finally, when the police were like, "Okay, you got your protective order, you can now communicate about this," and I talked to my lawyer. I had my lawyer review what I posted to make sure it was accurate, and I posted about it, and I told the Battletech community, "You've all been lied to. This person who's been telling you all this stuff has lied about who they are." Has lied about every aspect of what they're doing. This isn't anybody that you want. You know, this is a guy living with his father in Pennsylvania. You know, and I only use his first letter of his name to identify him, but I'm like, this person's lied to you all along. How can you believe anything that this person who has lied to you about every aspect of their life, who stole some woman's identity, stole her pictures and stuff and used them? How can you believe anything that this person's told you? And I'm sure it upset him that I outed him that he wasn't a lesbian nurse. But, you know, for 15 years, he had propagated that on the internet. So I was quiet to a point. And now I'm very selective. I don't talk about it often. This is one of the rare times I've gotten in a live group and talked about this. But I think it's important because I don't want people to suffer and go through what I did without knowing there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. Oh, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. They tried to bury the whole thing. They never admitted guilt. The only thing they ever admitted guilt about, my editor, in the middle of all this, the second book of the Blue Dawn series came out, and he sent me an email and he copied the president of Catalyst. And he said, "I wish this drivel would stop being associated with Battletech." Now, the book wasn't out yet. Okay. It was just the Amazon announcement that it was coming out. And so I reached out to him. I said, "It's amazing that you're calling a book drivel that you haven't even read. I think as an editor, that's bad." Now, they did call, the president of Catalyst called me from Gen Con and apologized for that. He said that was wrong. And I said, "Wow, that's big." John did send me an email later. He didn't call the editor, but he called or sent me an email and said, "It was wrong of me to have sent that to you." So, so I'm not saying they're douchebags, but douchebags. Yes. I'm not going to get into that right now. I just have nothing nice to say about Mike Stackpole. And it's, Mike, honestly, that's a whole different session and that requires alcohol. Yeah. No, we never found out who the woman was he took the pictures from. He immediately, when I put my blog post up, took all of them down but one. So I know he stole her identity because, he immediately ditched the evidence. Uh, we never found out who it was, but he would post these weird things. Not only was he a lesbian, he was adopting two children. And then he would post like, "I'm breastfeeding one of them right now. And then I'm going to go play Battletech down at the game store." And that was like, I was like, this doesn't sound like any Battletech fan I've ever heard. And I'll be honest with you, the pictures he used for Faith McCloskey were kind of hot. And I was like, I've known Battletech players. First of all, I'm physically fit for a Battletech. And technically, I'm more sexy than most of them. So, there was a lot of things that now I look back on it and didn't do it. I think what bothered me the most, and I put this in the blog, is I'm really upset that he posed as a lesbian. Then he posed as a transgender person. He did more damage to that community by being in saying he was those people and lying and raising all this trouble in the fan community. I think he did more damage to their cause than he ever did good. Yes. Going there or watch how I don't know. I haven't followed him recently on that stuff. My publicist only engages on the stuff when I need him to, when I'm doing a publicity tour. But I haven't gotten anything, but I'm sure he's gone off the rails about BasedCon at this point. And I'm really comfortable with that because I've spent time with all you guys. All right. Well, I know we're past the time, Robert, so I want to be respectful of the next group. So, and we do have I know a number of you have questions. You can corner me individually, but we also have a panel on cancellation later, so you can also hit me at that too. I just want to be respectful.
That was really great. Thank you. That's very entertaining and informative. So we are. Oh, somebody saying something? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, we're more or less on time. We'll be back here at 2 p.m. for a I cannot speak. Graphic novels and visual storytelling.